Welcome to Fresh Catholic, a podcast for those who are converting, reverting, or simply want a fresh perspective of the Catholic faith to help them to open their hearts and minds to become closer to the love and goodness of Christ. My daily prayer is that I will be a bright light to others, to be filled with the love and light of Christ, so that when people look at me, they see Him radiating out from me for His glory. Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Balderas, and I'm so happy you're here. Simon, we got to quit meeting like this.
Oh, my goodness.
You've traveled so far to come and hang out with me today. Thanks for joining me again.
You're welcome.
Co-host for life.
Oh, my gosh.
Uh-oh.
Well, I am here.
Oh, boy. Anyway, we're going to mix things up a little bit on this episode. I'm going to start with some Fresh Catholic news. So, I'm very excited. I'm chomping at the bit. I'm so excited because my big announcement is we have merch for sale. And for those of you who are old school, it's merchandise. So we have merch for sale on the Fresh Catholic website, which is freshcatholic.com. How exciting is that? So Simon's been working very hard on this, and I'm just excited because I can't wait to wear my Fresh Catholic hat. So that's something I'm excited about. But because we're doing so great and we're reaching lots of people, we are wanting to give Fresh Catholic our full attention and time. So we've been adding even extra things on the website, even extra things that can keep not only this podcast going, but just our mission going. Not just our mission, our mission. It's very exciting, and so I hope that you will go to the website. There is so much there to look at. It's all faith-inspired, and there's clothing, accessories, art, home goods, and they're kind of a blend of timeless tradition, but they're also kind of contemporary. It's kind of cool. There's all different styles, logos. It's not just the Fresh Catholic logo, although that's my personal favorite, but there's lots to choose from. There's something for everybody. And with the holidays coming, this would be a great way to shop online. You can get everything delivered to your house. You help Fresh Catholic, and what could be better than that? So I would also encourage you to go to the website, subscribe to Fresh Catholic, and that way we can share with you sales, coupons, new products. We're adding new things every day on the website. Simon is got his nose down doing this, so check it out and see what you think. And you know, when we do this podcast, you guys are getting the podcast for free. You're getting to listen to it. And when you purchase these things, these are things of value. These are things you can own. So show Fresh Catholic spirit by going to the website, freshcatholic.com, and see what's on there for you to order for yourself and your friends and your family. So thanks for that. Also, as always, please follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Share the posts with your friends. Please rate, review, subscribe. I need all of that from you guys. Please help me. I just need all your love and support, and I know you're out there listening, and any little thing will help. Please check out my Patreon. You get lots of perks there. Some of the merchandise is on there. If you become a Patreon subscriber, you would get some of the merch is included in your monthly fee. So woo-woo on that. So anyway, thank you for listening to Fresh Catholic News. Now, Simon, after last week's episode about saints, so for my listeners, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and have a listen. We talked about saints, and of course it inspired me even more. And so then I was thinking, how can a person, I'll use me as an example, how can I become even more virtuous? How can I take bigger steps towards holiness and sainthood? Because as I said in the last episode, I want to be a saint. So I did some research, and I want to take it to the next level.
Okay. Well, I know you've been really getting into this in a big way.
Okay. So I'm going to give you some lessons in virtues. What do you think about that?
Well, let me just say this. I know that you have really been doing your research on this, and every time I pop my head in your office, you're just typing away, and you got your head down on the content, which is really awesome. And I saw some of your notes and some of the outlines, and it looks pretty deep. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, be the one that needs simplification, because I think a lot of these concepts with these saints had achieved and how you've outlined this, it's deep stuff.
Okay, so I think that sounds wonderful. And once again, I'm not an expert or a theologian, and I did get a lot of this information from, once again, Catholicism for Dummies. If you don't have that book, I think you should go out and get it, and I think they should sponsor me because I promote them so much on my podcast. So just a little side note, if anybody from Catholicism for Dummies wants to sponsor Fresh Catholic, call me.
And I know one of the reasons why you like that is because they do simplify a lot of very complicated concepts. And so I know you have it down in a very basic kind of terminology and ways, and that's what I'm going to be asking you to do for the audience and for myself.
I feel like Catholicism in general is so deep and serious and very complicated. I don't think anybody could possibly know everything about Catholicism through their life. I think it's an ongoing learning process. And so that's exactly why I like that book. It's very simple. It's very straight and to the point. You can then take those things and go explore more.
Right.
With other resources.
Right. And as you know, I've been doing my own studying on my own and learning about the saints. And I've been recently reading a bunch of books on St. Padre Pio, as I mentioned before. And some of the things that he's achieved are really unexplainable. He even himself would call them, they're just a mystery. So I think you breaking this down in the most simplest way that we can understand, I know our minds are somewhat limited when it comes to God's miraculous ways.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things about being Catholic that I love, that I get kind of, I don't want to say irritated, but I get frustrated with, is when people who aren't Catholic or people who are down on religion in general don't want to see the mystery of it or just the belief. Like, just believe. We don't always have to dissect everything and make it not so. It's like, I like it sometimes where it's like, I don't know, it's God's will. I don't have the answer to that. And I think that's okay sometimes. I don't think we always have to have a answer to everything. And even my dad, who was a science teacher, he did recognize the fact that he was a guy who liked facts. He really liked to prove things. But there were things based on my belief system that, like I think I talked about in the angel episode, where I would tell him a story about something and he would believe me because he didn't want to dissect it. I really believed it myself, and he said he couldn't dispute it. He didn't want to dispute it.
Right. And I think some simple things like the Eucharist or when you go to adoration, it's something that you can't necessarily put into words, but it is something to just sit there and behold.
Right.
And experience.
And I think if your heart is, especially in adoration, if your heart is open to be in the presence of the Lord right in front of you, in the Eucharist right in front of you, and you're adoring him, I believe it's something you can't explain. I mean, even Henry Cooper in his episode said when he goes to adoration, he gets this feeling. I get this certain feeling. There's really nothing like it. And I can't explain it. I shouldn't have to explain it.
Right.
You know, I think that's the thing. I think, why should I have to explain to a doubter? Why should I have to explain that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm entitled to my relationship with the Lord, however that looks. If I'm so open to him that I'm going to feel his healing touch with me, or I feel like he's actually talking to me, I get these messages, I shouldn't have to prove that to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is.
Right. I think when people don't see things right before them, it's just hard for them to understand the invisible part of it. And I do think about things like in the Old Testament, how the high priest would go into the holiest of holies, which is the most holy room of the temple, and he would be allowed to be in the presence of God, just like we're standing in front of the
Blessed Sacrament.
The Blessed Sacrament. They would only allow him to do that once a year.
Oh, I would die.
And when he would go in, they had to tie a rope around his waist, because if he wasn't pure, he would die on the spot, and they would have to drag him out with a rope. That's powerful, to be in the presence of God. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I think about that, and I think the Israelites would understand these concepts and tie the rope around the high priest and so forth, and he was the only one that was allowed in there for the whole nation. And when I think about how they did that, it was very clear as to what's in there, and it's a powerful thing, because I'm sure some high priest did die when they went in there. And so that's a clear thing. But now that God has opened up the holiest of holies for the world to be in front of, oh my God, what a privilege.
Yeah.
And to think about that concept that every day you could go into adoration and be in the holiest of holies, literally standing in front of Christ.
Right. Because I was going to say, when you said once a year, I would be just absolutely depleted and absolutely dehydrated. And I would just shrivel up and die. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so used to receiving the Eucharist, like pretty much every day. It's rare I don't go. And like I've said in a past episode, during COVID, when we were told we couldn't go to Mass, I felt like I'd been stabbed in the heart, because I thought, I'm not going to be able to receive the Eucharist. What? I rely on it. I need it.
I know.
I need it like air and food and water, So, wow. Anyway. Okay. So, thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since I'm going to take it to the next level, I learned that there's 3 stages of spiritual growth. Okay? So they are purgative, illuminative, and unitive.
Uh-oh. I'm already going to need an explanation. What are those things?
Just saying them is a challenge. So if I mess it up, I'm sorry. I'm going to try real hard. Purgative has 2 elements, penance and mortification. So the goal of the purgative stage is to achieve purity of soul, and to remove bad habits and evil desires, and to avoid vices, which are pride, envy, lust, anger, gluttony, greed, and sloth.
Okay, just one quick question. I just want to clarify. So these 3 stages of spiritual growth, this is sort of a how-to, right? Like how to become a saint, right? Is that what you're explaining here?
I mean, I guess let's say that.
Okay, so if you can get...
It wasn't said that. That's not how they said it in the book, but I like that.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
How to become a saint in 3 easy steps. No, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Not easy.
No, it's not.
I'm joking. It's not easy. So in the purgative stage, when you are trying to have purity of soul, removing these bad habits and evil desires and avoiding the vices, you're probably going to need to, not probably, you are going to need to have penance. You're going to need to go to confession. And you're going to need to be sorry for past sins. And you're going to need to practice self-denial and sacrifice. You're going to need to purge, cleanse, and purify.
Would you say that this first stage is a stage that a lot of people just get stuck in and they can't ever get past it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I would say.
They're over and over again, they're returning to their sins of pride and lust and anger and sloth. By the way, I love that word, sloth.
Sloth. And I was asking you before, is that sloth or sloth? Because I've heard both. So I like sloth. And I know why you like it, because of the character in that movie.
Utopia, yeah. The DMV.
Oh, goodness. Don't turn into that guy. Anyway, I feel like, in answer to your question, yes, I think people maybe go into this stage and think, oh, I can do that. Easy peasy. No, I think this is a rough stage. And what I was telling you before is that when I decided to become Catholic, I had to really decide if I could take this on and do these things, give up certain things. I had a whole other life going on, a whole other life. And to give the commitment, you have to give it the full commitment. You can't just say, oh, you know what? I'm going to do these 2 and not the other things, And so I feel like if you're converting, coming into the faith, being initiated into the faith, or you're returning to the faith, even if you're a cradle Catholic, you have to remove bad habits and evil desires. If you want to really take this on and for it to be something serious like I do, then you need to really focus on these things, because you're going to have to give these things up. Like I always say, you have to be a clean vessel. You have to go in to be able to receive the Lord with a clean vessel.
Okay.
You can't be dirty and mucked up.
And the way to get clean is through penance, which means going to confession,
yes,
and receiving your penance and performing your penance, whatever that is,
right,
for you, and doing it as many times as necessary until you can break some of those bad habits and traits and all those things, right?
But I feel like you have to also go into it with the desire and the drive that this is important. This is for your salvation. This is for your soul.
Right.
And it's not like somebody who's scolding you and saying, you got to stop drinking. You got to stop eating so much. You got to stop being so prideful. It's more about that you want to be a clean vessel. You want to show your devotion to the Lord. And so you have to take these things on. Being Catholic we're not messing around here.
Mm-hmm.
Not to discount other religions or faiths or anything, but I think a lot of the other religions kind of can take things or leave them. It's like, oh yeah, today we're going to do that, but tomorrow we're not going to do that.
Mm.
When I took on this faith, I realized it was going to be a life change. If you're going to do it properly, it's a 24/7, lifelong, life-changing thing you're doing. So you have to give these things up. You have to make that decision at whatever phase you're in. Again, if you're cradle Catholic, if you're coming back to the church, if you're coming into the church, you have to decide that it's important to take it seriously. And if you have any doubt, and if you start to waver, look at the crucifix.
Right.
Just look at that. I don't know how somebody can't look at that and go, okay, wow, everything I do in comparison is easy compared to what you had to do for us, Lord. So that is such a humbling thing. If anybody gets prideful or sassy or anything, go look at that cross.
Right.
And like ours in our church is life size. He is life size. I don't know how that can't affect a person.
We'll be right back.
Rising anti-Semitism. New generations redefining how they connect with Jewish traditions. Changing dynamics among Jews around the globe. Take a deep dive into these topics and more on Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, the podcast brought to you by the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. Hear from the thought leaders, politicians, scholars, and artists at the forefront of Jewish life today. Subscribe to Mosaic, Exploring Jewish Issues, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely something to see. And I remember going into a church and seeing a crucifix, and I can't remember what it was. It was in Los Angeles. I think it was in the valley somewhere. But that crucifix in particular really showed the agony.
It's in the cathedral.
Is it?
Yeah. It's very agonizing, that crucifix.
Yeah.
I know the exact one you're talking about.
Yeah. Very humbling, just standing there looking at it.
Yeah. So after penance, there's mortification, and that is oriented toward future temptations. And it's self-denial that strengthens your will and sacrifice for others' needs. So while penance is sorrow for past sins, mortification is trying to eliminate future temptations.
And so you're saying that through self-denial, that's the way to do it? That strengthens your will to not do those things? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay. And what are some examples of self-denial?
And it kind of goes back to this other part of avoiding vices. If you know, for example, that you struggle with lust, you probably shouldn't put yourself in a position where that's going to become a problem and an issue.
Right.
I think we have such access to everything today. you better not get on the computer online and be looking at pornography.
Right.
You probably shouldn't go out to bars drinking with your friends if you're a married man. Things like that. Don't put yourself in a position to have those vices in your life.
Right.
And I just think you have to be really disciplined and honest about what you think is going to put you in a bad spot that's going to make you have these vices.
Okay. So when I think of self-denial, I also think of things like fasting, for example. So you maybe skip a few meals or something within a meal, skip meat on Fridays, that sort of thing. And when I think of that, I think of when I fasted and I've been hungry, I immediately am kind of slip into this sort of spiritual mindedness, and I think, I'm giving this up for you, Lord. And I heard a really super interesting, powerful way to do that. And I was listening to a priest, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about the temptation of lust and pornography specifically, with a lot of men have that struggle. And one thing he said was, whenever you have those temptations, offer it up for 20 men. So not just yourself. Pray to God and say, God, it's really hard for me right now. I'm really struggling. I'm going to offer this up, this struggle, this suffering, not only for myself, but for 20 other men.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing to think about, because there's 20 other men that are also struggling with this in the same way.
Right.
And so you're praying for not only yourself, but for them.
Right. Well, and I think we live in such a world that we all know this, that we are being presented with these vices all day, every day. And it's more and more apparent and prevalent and accessible than it ever has been. I mean, than it ever has been.
Right.
Everything is very easy access. Everything is very superficial. Everything is very instant. If you want food, it's delivered to your door. If you want to look at pornography, you just look it up on your phone. You don't even have to be at home.
Yeah.
You can look it up anywhere. If you want to, there's a lot of pride out there, not just the gay pride, but I'm talking about pride in general. Like I've said in another episode, it's okay to be proud of your children or proud, but there's a difference of being overly full of yourself and prideful.
Right. Too good for other people.
Yeah, too good for other people. And then I think we live in such a competitive world where everybody's trying to one-up each other and be better than the other person. How about just be happy for the other person?
Right.
How about be happy for what they have and let them enjoy whatever, but you don't always have to be in competition.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how we live in this, especially in this digital age, where people are judged and proud of how many likes they get and how many people have seen them on Instagram and their TikToks and all those kinds of things. I think the world is so oriented that way.
Right. And I was even thinking one day, I'll be honest, I get excited when people are liking my Instagram and my Facebook and they're commenting and they're listening to the podcast. I get really excited.
Yeah, but it's for a bigger purpose.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's not about me. I think the things that even more and more are realizing is I do Fresh Catholic because I'm trying to throw a net out to draw people to the Lord. So I'm trying to do that in any way I can. It's not about look at me, and it's all about Lori Balderas. It's about the people that are coming and listening or looking. I'm trying to funnel it towards the Lord and my mission. So, I wouldn't ever want anybody to think I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is all about me, because it's not. I've had that in my past where it's like, obviously I was in beauty pageants and modeling and all these things. So I kind of used to have that tendency, but that's just not at all what I'm about now. So when things seem to be superficially important to people, that's kind of too bad. Like, use it for something better, maybe.
Got it.
Anyway, are we ready to move on to the next stage, or did you have more questions about
I guess the one thing is you mentioned the mortification part of it is when you say sacrifice for others' needs. Can you give me just a short example of what that would be like?
I would say, in my opinion, that's like giving up things or luxuries that you think that, you have to have. Give those up. Maybe, like we've talked about in other episodes about Lent, giving up things. Like, let's say you go get Starbucks every day. Do you really need Starbucks every day? No, you don't. So why don't you take however, I don't even know how much it costs because I don't go get Starbucks every day. Let's say it's $5 a day. Collect $5 a day for a whole month and then donate it to a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
Or do something with it. Let's say you go out and, I don't know, go to breakfast once a week and go to the movies once a week. How about you skip a week, take that money and go help somebody else or buy somebody else a meal? Instead of it for you, buy it for somebody else that's in need.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you laughing?
I was laughing because I was remembering a time when we were on a trip, and I know you like to really help people, and I know you have a big heart for homeless people. And I remember this one moment where we literally went to Starbucks, and you saw a homeless person begging for money.
Out in front of the Catholic Church in Chicago.
Yes, and I know you like to give them food and things of sustenance more than you like to just hand them $20 or whatever it is.
Right.
And you went into the Starbucks and you bought an orange juice and I think it was a banana and something else.
And like a bagel
or something. And you handed it to them and they looked at you and they said, well, where's the money?
And what did I do?
You literally took the things out of his hands and said, fine, I'll give it to somebody else.
Yep. And I did.
Yeah. I thought that was I was kind of shocked when that happened, but of course that's something that Lori, you would do.
And I did give it to somebody. And when I gave it to the other person, he was so grateful.
Right.
And he was so humbled and so grateful. And I handed it to him and he gave me a hug. I was like, okay, I tried with the other guy, but see, his intentions were bad.
Right.
But my intentions, I tried.
I know.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry. I started.
No, that's
just
great.
thinking about that.
I forgot all about that.
Okay, so we're past the purgative stage, which is it's a tough one. So we're moving.
Well,
on.
like you said, I feel like that was a valid question of, do you think people get stuck on that one? The answer is yes, 100% they get stuck on it. I feel like a lot of people look down on the Catholic Church because we do have a lot of rules and guidelines, but it's all for everybody's good. God knows the best thing for us. And that's sometimes, it's kind of like when a parent tells you, don't eat candy all day, you're going to throw up. And you go, well, I'm going to do whatever I want. And then guess what you do? You throw up.
Yeah.
So I feel like the Catholic Church has all these rules and guidelines because Jesus and God knows best and we should follow them. But people don't want to follow the rules. People don't want to do what's good for them.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't till it's too late or till it's almost at the end of their life and they're desperate. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'll go change my ways. It's like, well, you've had all this time.
I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, these aren't things that anybody needs.
No.
You don't need any of these things.
No. I don't think people want to have anger or envy or too much pride or be greedy. I don't think anybody wants those things. And I think they feel bad when they act out in those ways. I think they don't,
Right.
You know.
I look back at this list and I had all these. And I felt maybe not sloth. I'd like a little more sprinkle of sloth. But I've had all these. And I feel like I wasn't feeling good when I was doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know. I mean, this always sounds dumb when I say it, but that was just my life. I just thought that was it. That's what everybody did.
Yeah.
But when I look back and I go, oh, I did not feel good. I didn't look good. I wasn't acting in a good way. I was toxic, kind of inside and out.
Yeah. All of those things, all of those sins have a price.
They sure do. Sure do. So then we move on to the illuminative phase, which is taking it to another level. So so if you make it through that first little test,
Okay.
and I think that takes a long time, that first section. It's hard to break bad habits. And I'm just going to remind everybody, because this worked for me, I think the best time to stop a bad habit is during Lent. It gives you a 40-day jump start on anything you're trying to break, a habit you're trying to break.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, I used to be a daily drinker. And so a couple years ago for Lent, was like, well, I'm going to give up drinking every day. And I'm just going to drink on the weekends. I couldn't give it all the way up. I just couldn't do it. But
yeah, you make it sound so bad. You actually would drink a glass of wine.
I know, but I was drinking every day. And I had done that for over 20 years. And so I decided what would be a really hard thing for me to give up at Lent. And that was it, because I had been doing that for years. And so I was like, okay, so this is a good time to start because it'll give me 40 days. And I did not want to let the Lord down. Like, I probably would have caved if it hadn't have been for Lent. And so I gave it the 40 days. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to give it the 50 days of Easter. And then I was good. I was good to go. And now I just drink on the weekends, and I do miss it sometimes, but I just pray. I want to stick with it. But if anybody out there needs a good moment, I mean, start now if you would like. But I'm just saying, if you need an extra motivation and push, Lent is great because that's at least 40 days of starting your good habit. So the illuminative phase, while avoiding mortal sin and attachment to worldly things, a person becomes more enlightened with virtue.
Okay.
They become less selfish. They like more solitude and meditation and seek out works of mercy for those in need.
Yeah. I know when we talked about this just briefly, I love this stage. I love that part. I love solitude. I love acts of selflessness. I think it's super important. It makes me really feel balanced when I can do those things.
Well, and I think if people can, like I envision in the first stage, you're wearing this big heavy armor that's weighing you down and you're kind of removing it. And then you go into this phase and you're kind of leaving that old shell behind you. And now you kind of want some, again, solitude, peace, quiet, meditation. You kind of become more inward.
Yeah.
I know you're naturally an inward person. But for me to go through this phase is like not always needing things happening or stimulation. I don't always need that. And that's another thing about the Catholic Church is it's so serious. It's so quiet. It's so reverent.
Right.
It doesn't need a bunch of music and banging of drums and all this stuff. We have that.
Yeah.
But then there's the moments where people can literally go in the church every day and sit in quiet solitude.
Right.
And pray.
Right.
And then we can also pray as a group. And so I love that we can do that because, like I've said, when I go into the Adoration Chapel, I feel like I'm going underwater because it's so quiet and peaceful. And when you're in that element or feel like you're in that element, it immediately calms you.
Right.
And I don't know how anybody can really genuinely and honestly focus on the Lord with a bunch of noise.
Yeah. I remember previous to coming back to the Catholic Church when I was going to other churches, other types of churches, I remember a very distinct understanding about quiet because it was often encouraged to go into your prayer closet, is what they would call it. Go into your prayer closet and just it's you and God and you just, have this conversation, which was great. And I did that a lot. But I remember going to the services and they were often a production with the singing, the light shows, the 12 screens. I mean, it was, a lot of times it was a big, big production. And I was reminded of this weekend, actually, when we were in Mass. And right in the middle of Mass, the electricity went off. Everything went off. And, of course, we don't have big productions that are during Mass. It's just, it just kept on going without it.
Yeah, didn't even miss a beat.
Yeah, didn't even miss a beat. And I was not only in my normal zone, but it reminded me of that prayer closet where I had that one-on-one. And when I go to Mass, it's like that. It's a very quiet, very serious, very inward experience. I don't need the production anymore. I have this communion with Christ, right?
Right. And I think the beauty also is that we're all there as a group. We're all in there praying. But everybody, even though we're all together, we are all in our very reverent zone.
Yeah.
I agree with you. The electricity went off. Father Leon didn't miss a beat, just kept going. And it didn't ruin anything.
No.
We didn't need any of that. That's not why we're there.
Mm-hmm.
We're there for the Lord. The Eucharist is not, you don't have to plug it in.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not trying to downplay people going to church and having the light show and all that stuff, because I think it's actually kind of fun sometimes to really, really celebrate and give it up for God and go to a concert even and sing his praise music and stuff. I think that's really good for people.
Certain people.
Yeah. Certain people.
I don't care for that.
Yeah. Well, I don't either, but I do think that it could be a good experience, because I don't want people to think I'm...
No. We it's whatever you all want to do to be with the Lord. But our own personal thing is, one of the things we love about the Catholic Church is it's very reverent. You don't need all the bells and whistles. You just need the chimes.
Yeah, the bells. I used to love doing that when I was an altar boy. Couldn't wait for those moments.
Anyways, so I do think it's important to leave all those worldly things behind, to focus more on solitude, your time with the Lord, not have all these outside interferences. I think that's just really important. And again, I just think it helps to really hone in on your prayer, like envisioning what the Lord is trying to say to you. So cleansing. During this phase, there's a lot of spiritual cleansing happening. And in this phase, God is permitting personal suffering in order for the person to be strengthened in faith.
Wow.
So we know about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. There are people suffering way worse than we are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I am not at all on a pity potty and sobbing in my cereal. But I am acknowledging and recognizing that you and I have been going through a tremendous amount of suffering. And it's been constant, and it's been relentless. And there are days where I'll say to you, I just want a break from it. I just need a break. I need something good to happen.
Yeah.
I need something where, I don't know, I was telling you I went to the Adoration Chapel this last weekend, and I was so exhausted, and I just knelt down and said, Lord, I'm feeling like I'm being crushed.
Right.
And I do know that it is building up our faith. I do know we are getting strength from the Lord.
Right.
And it's really hard. You know I tell you all the time, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And it's hard to keep that positive attitude.
Yeah. And in reading about the saints, I know that God permitted a lot of hardships for these saints to have to endure, and things such as injustice, persecution, things that people would strike out against them because they were jealous or they wanted to have power or whatever. It's those types of things, right?
Right.
We're talking about.
Yes.
And those are the things that we've experienced. Injustice. People have said things that weren't true. You know, whenever we have gone through any kind of suffering, I'm always looking for the lesson.
Yes.
I'm always asking you, I just want to know why.
Right.
And what is God trying to teach us here?
Right. And sometimes I can look at it and say, well, this is what I think. Or especially you can look back on something and go, oh, that was the lesson. When you're in it, in the mud, as I say, it's really hard to see what God is doing. But we always have to remember that God always wants the best for us. When something bad happens, it's for the ultimate good.
Right.
So that's a thing that's hard for people to grasp. It's hard for people to feel and know, but it is true.
I think it teaches extreme obedience and obedience to God and God only. I was reading a story the other day about the suffering of a certain saint who was really being persecuted. And he got an audience with the Pope. And the Pope, he was being accused of a lot of things that he didn't do. And he goes, why did you do these things? Why didn't you conform to what people were saying? He goes, I would jump out a window if God told me to. If you told me to jump out of a window, Pope, I would do that. That's extreme obedience. That really put it in perspective to me about what these lessons can teach. Obedience.
Right.
God,
right.
Devotion to.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's meant to strengthen your faith. It's meant to have you only rely on the Lord, to not count on other people. That's the lesson I'm learning more and more and more. I have things and people being removed from my life. And every time one of those people are removed, it's making me more and more reliant on the Lord. Like I even had a thing really recently, just last summer, where I had a friend that I was talking to practically every day and pouring out my heart and being very personal and really just spilling my guts, right? So it ends up that person has now detached from me, and that was very painful. But everything that I would tell her, that's who I was telling. Or if I had a problem, or if I was worried, or if I was upset, or I needed a solution, because my dad's gone, and that's who I used to go to for those things, I was going to her. And she and I even joked, and she would say, oh, I'm, taking over for your dad. And I would say, yes, because I need that. But what happened when she exited my life is now I'll think, oh, I need to call somebody about this or tell somebody about this. And I'm not talking about you, Simon. I'm talking about additional people.
Right.
I now stop myself, and I don't need those people.
Yeah.
I don't need those people. So now what I'm doing is, if there's a problem, something I'm stressing about, something I'm having anxiety about, I immediately start praying, and I seek out the Lord. I don't need a human. I need him. He's the one that's going to answer my prayers anyway. Nobody can answer my prayers.
Right.
So I think when things are rough, when things are spiky, when things are, walking through the fire, he's the one that you need to lean on, turn to, and it's up to him what happens to you.
Right. So when the vices and stuff are left behind and we're into the illuminative phase and God is spiritually cleansing us from all of this stuff and we're learning all of these lessons, what does this lead to?
Okay, so when your vices are eliminated and you replace them with good habits, those are also virtues. Okay? So the virtues are prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. So I think these are really interesting. And actually, I was going to do the episode just on those things. And then I changed my mind.
Okay.
Because I do that, I think, every week.
Yeah.
I get an idea and then I change my mind. People.
I'm getting used to that. You telling me, I'm going to do this. And then
on the day of, I go, I changed my mind.
Well, you tweaked it a little bit.
Yeah, I tweaked it a little bit. But I think because the virtues, I think, are like the creamy center, and I have these other things around it that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, how do you get there?
Yeah, that I think are important. So it's not just about the virtues. Yeah, it's these 3 stages of getting to the ultimate holiness.
Right.
Yeah. So let me just describe what these are. Prudence is the ability to make good moral judgments, to know what to say or do, when and how, and there is a proper place and time and a way to do things. So that's prudence.
Okay.
Justice is giving people his or her due, doing the right thing for the right reason. You don't discriminate, and you need to be honest. That's justice.
Yeah, I see that one in particular as something that really stands out about you to me. I feel like you're a real advocate for justice.
I am.
Yeah.
I hate injustice.
I do too, but I feel like you act on it a lot. You stand up for a lot of people, and you have a big distaste for anything that's untruthful.
Right.
And all that stuff.
Right. And I also don't like it when somebody does something and gets away with it or blames it on somebody else.
Yeah.
I really struggle with that because I've had that happen so much to me, and I just don't like it. And I don't like people to be accused of things they haven't done. I think that is a horrible thing to do to somebody. Horrible. Temperance is moderation, establishing limits, know when to say no or stop, and aiming for a happy balance.
Okay.
And fortitude is courage to do what has to be done or say what has to be said. Prudence tells you what, how, and when, but fortitude is the force that enables you to fulfill that directive. It's not reckless or irrational. You have to think through what has to be done and act prudently, and this virtue builds character.
Okay.
So out of these 4, what's the easiest for you?
Well, I would say the easiest two for me would be temperance and prudence. I feel like I know when to say no. I'm always aiming for a balance in my life. I do have the ability to make good moral judgments. I'm always kind of distinguishing the right from the wrong. The one that I have to say I have struggled with, honestly, is fortitude. I don't want to say I'm a weak person, but I do want to say that I'm very, especially when I'm in public, pretty shy. Like, I can talk to you right now. I feel like we're having a conversation. But if we were in front of an audience, I'd probably have to be like the wizard in the behind.
Yeah, you'd be
curtain.
behind a
I have to drape
partition.
Yeah, but I feel that my personality in particular makes me weak, I guess. And it's kind of a hard thing for me to say. I'm easily walked on.
That's very true. And I spend most of my time punching people in the nose. No, I'm kidding. I agree with that.
But I do feel comfortable being in the background. I don't like to be in the spotlight. I don't like it. It doesn't feel right to me. I would rather see the results of my work. That's one of the reasons why I like making movies, because I can make people feel things from my work. They're looking at my work, but they're not looking at me directly.
I know. I look at you. I like to just stare at you, but I'm your wife, so I'm allowed. Nobody else look at him, but I'm looking at him.
What about you?
Okay, so I feel like the ones that I think are easy for me are justice and fortitude.
The opposite of me.
Yes. So I think I was just going to say, so that's awesome that we put them together and we're a good balance.
Yes.
Yeah, we help each other out with those things. Because I think there's definite things that you help me to do and vice versa.
Right.
Yeah. And so I know we've had people say, oh, you're not compatible, or you don't have anything in common. Well, I think we complement each other, because I think I do all the things you don't like to do. And I think that there's things you teach me and help me to shape myself to be a softer person. And I think I try to get you to have a little bit more of a solid foundation, and where you feel a little more strong.
Yeah.
And I would say, obviously, my challenge is temperance. I mean, with an Italian temper, temperance is I would say my challenge out of all these.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm doing a lot better. I used to be a wildcat.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like a tiger. So I'm trying. Anyway, so those are the virtues. And then the last stage, the last thing is unitive, which is a level of perfection. The desire to only do the will of God. Temptation and sin aren't issues at this stage. Even if you're still experiencing suffering, there's an atmosphere of peace. In this part, the soul is united to God by the virtue of love and the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, which are wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, piety, and fear of the Lord. And the last note says, this stage takes a lifetime to perfect.
Right. And I think, honestly, Lori, if I really think about these 3 stages really seriously, especially this last one, I hate to say this, but I think this is one that some people may never experience. I see people struggling in the first 2.
Especially the first one.
But to do only the desire of God, that's sainthood right there. It makes sense.
Right. Well, I do feel like, looking at these different levels, I do feel like it really took me a lot of years to go through the first one. I feel like I really have, I don't want to say I've mastered any of this, because I just don't feel that way. But I do feel like I made a lot of progress in the first few years of just really wanting to be dedicated to this, and making a conscious effort, and to say, well, these are going to be hard. This is going to be tough, but it's going to be worth it. And I'm not saying it was an easy road. I definitely, that's what confession is for. You blow it, you do something dumb and stupid, and you go to confession. It's not like you look at this list and go, oh, I can knock these off in one weekend, no problem, and then I'm cured and I'm fine. It's not like that. It's an ongoing thing, but I do feel like it has to be that you really have that need and desire and want to give up all these things for the ultimate goal of being right with God.
Yeah.
And I do feel like the second phase, like I say, all these are a work in progress. But when you get to the last phase, I have moments of these where it's like, I'll think, I do only want to do what God wants.
Yeah.
And I do feel like temptation and sin, they're not in the forefront of my head anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not. Like I said, they used to be kind of a commonplace. They used to be like a daily thing, these different things. And now I'll stop myself and say, do I really want to do that? Because then I have to go to confession. I'm going to hurt my relationship with the Lord. It's going to put me in bad standing with him. Do I really want to do that? And the answer is no.
I think this last level especially really makes me think about the saints in order to really achieve that selfless last stage and being one and only doing the work of God. Your spouse pretty much has to be at the same level in order for it to work, because they're going to feel neglected, I think.
Right.
And, it's no wonder a lot of saints were nuns and priests and holy monks.
Right. Because they were very focused. Like when we had that episode with Father Matthew, and he was talking about the priesthood, and it was asked, do you think priests should be married? And I know that was in the misconceptions episode. And, your focus would be, you would have to take care of your family. Right. It would be divided.
Right. I know one of your favorite saints is Saint Monica, and obviously she was a mother, and she had a lot of praying to do for her family, for her kids.
And her husband.
Because
he was really rough, and he ended up converting.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was rough on her. They had a really tumultuous marriage, and I believe she also had a problem with her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And so she just prayed her little heart out, God bless her, and look what happened there.
I know. Yeah. It does make me really think, though, that if you are choosing if you're called to the married life, that you should both be striving for the same thing.
Right.
Which is to try to be as close to God as you possibly can.
Right.
And have your marriage be one with him.
Right. I agree. And just a little preview, we're going to be doing 2 episodes about marriage, one with Deacon Don talking about the facts about marriage, and then Simon and I are going to do one open up about our marriage and the hills and valleys of our marriage. But I think both of those episodes will be very valuable. And so that just reminded me that one of the things is, I do agree with you, Simon, that I can't imagine not being married to a Catholic. And I've told you before that you're my favorite person to talk about Christ and the church and religion about, because I feel like we are on the same level. But I don't think either one of us is trying to distract the other one from their quest of being with the Lord. Like, you're not telling me, don't go to Mass every day, stay home with me. You're not telling me that.
Right.
Or, he comes first. So you would never tell me stop praying or don't pray or don't go there or don't go to church. I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just a little preview of what's coming up. I'm excited about that. Anyway, so what do you think?
I think that was a lot. I think you broke it down really well. Thanks for doing that.
I just think it's a good follow-up episode to the Saint episode, because I think we talked about the saints. Now it's like, let's go out and be saints. That's kind of what I want to do here is like, we talked about it. What does it look like? What do we have to do? And now let's go do it. And let's encourage others to be saints.
Okay.
So go saints. All right. So thank you for coming again today, Simon.
Okay.
Thank you to my listeners. Go check out my website. Go check out my store. In the website, go check out my Patreon channel. Thank you. Love you. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. Now go out and be a bright light in someone's life. And remember, be focused, be faithful, and be fresh. Fresh Catholic is produced, edited, and recorded at Wonder Mouse Studios in Ventura, California.